Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Let's All Be the Change. This is my continuing feature on great inventions throughout history. I have a book of 1,001 greatest inventions of all time, and I sort of pick them at random every week. And today's a biggie. Today I'm going to talk about the World Wide Web, which I'm sure you guys are all familiar with. You're probably using it now or watching me, as a matter of fact. And this was developed in 1989. So here's where I talk about it. I might as well just read from my notes here. So, invented in 1989 by Tim Berners-Lee of CERN, shown on the bottom left, along with his new creation, the World Wide Web, um, was certainly quite a revolutionary invention. However, like most great inventions, a long string of closely related previous ones led to its development. So, contrary to much public awareness, the World Wide Web is not the same thing as the Internet, the first vestiges of which were developed back in the 1960s by various computer scientists and engineers working at the United States Department of Defense as well as the RAND Corporation. However, World Wide Web, or WWW, was the first publicly available interconnected information, platform that enabled sharing content over the internet. Berners-Lee made www practical by developing the first web server, web browser, and hypertext markup language, known as HTML, the standard language for creating websites. By the early 90s, several online services like AOL, Yahoo, and Netscape were developed to allow easy public access to the World Wide Web. Of course, the other inventions that allowed access to the web were the personal computer or PC, shown on the bottom middle, and later the smartphone, shown on the bottom right. And that's just what I wrote in my notes. I might as well just talk about it a little bit more because this is an invention I'm very enthusiastic about and have been ever since I first used it in the 90s. Maybe I'll just tell you my own personal experience working with computers and later PCs and then finally the internet or the World Wide Web. I actually got into computers very early. I was born in 1962, and the first computer I ever used was in 1973 when I was just 11 years old. This was when I was in sixth grade. Our school had a teletype terminal. I don't know how many guys are remember those things or familiar with them. It's basically just a typewriter that was connected to a mainframe computer that was located at the Lawrence Hall of Science in Berkeley, about 20 miles away from my school. And I love this thing. I mean, even though it was very primitive by today's standards, pretty noisy too, it just typed everything. You could still access a computer and you could run programs on it. And it had a library of programs that were available to run, and you could write your own programs in BASIC. BASIC was the first language I ever learned how to use. And then I think I got my first PC in 1984. This was when I was like 22 years old. I got an IBM PC. They were one of the first commercially available PCs. This was before Mac. I think the first kind of easy to use one with a graphics user interface, kind of like the one shown with Tim Berners-Lee picture on the bottom left. This is a later model PC that had a GUI graphics user interface that was first made popular by Steve Jobs with his, I guess, first with Lisa and then later with the Macintosh, which was really the first commercially successful Apple PC. Um, and yeah, so I've had several PCs since my first. I've probably had about a total of close to 10, I think. I don't think I've ever had one for more than about 5 years because they keep getting better and faster and smaller and more practical. Now I'm using a laptop, kind of like the one shown on the bottom middle here. And I remember the first time I used the World Wide Web. I guess it was also the first time I ever used the internet. This was, I think, in 1992. I got in the mail. I guess they were giving a lot of these things away at that time. I remember getting in the mail a floppy disk that allowed you to, I guess, download CompuServe. That was one of the first web servers. I don't think it still exists, but that was the first one I used back in 1992. You couldn't do a whole lot with it, I remember. I was still really excited about it. I remember the first night I was using it. I was on it for probably several hours, way into the wee hours of the night, just kind of having fun with it. I think I played some trivia game and did some other cool stuff on it. I think I was also looking up. I remember I was looking up election results because I think it was right around the time of the 1992 presidential election. That was when Clinton won his first term against who was it? Dole, I think. I was pretty happy about that. I still think Clinton's one of our probably the best president I remember. I kind of miss the Clinton years to tell you the truth. Uh, but yeah, that was my first experience on the web, and then AOL came out shortly afterwards, America Online. I think that was the most popular web server for about 10 years. I first was started using AOL, I think, in 1995, and I used it for the next 10 years or so. I did a lot on AOL, and I loved AOL. And I used to play a lot of trivia games. I used to visit the chat rooms. That's where I first had cyber sex. I ended up having cyber sex about 30 times. I don't want to go into that in detail, but I had a lot of fun. It was kind of like a virtual environment for me. I was much more socially active on AOL than I was in real life at that time. I was still kind of a hermit back then, but I thought it was great, and I still think it's great. I mean, of course, now we have smartphones, and the funny thing is, I hardly ever use my smartphone for browsing the web. I still use my PC. I guess I'm kind of old school in that way, but I never got into smartphones that much. I mean, I just think their screens are too small. I never got into texting because they have a tiny little virtual, keyboard on your smartphone, which I kind of find hard to use, and I don't know why, but everybody these days seems to prefer texting to just talking on the phone. I prefer talking on the phone because you can say a lot more. So I guess I'm kind of old school in a lot of ways, but I still love modern technology, and one of my favorite pieces of modern technology that I really love and have embraced and used to just a huge extent. I'd say during the last half of my life, the last 30 years or so, is the web. I'm really grateful to the web, and I think it is really one of the greatest inventions of all time. I'm really happy with all the new technology we have. I don't even have a problem with Chat GPT or a lot of these, AI systems that are, a lot of people are kind of scared of them right now. I'm not. I'm excited about them. I think whatever problems we have with technology will be the result of us, not the technology itself. That's just what I think. I've always been kind of pessimistic about human nature. And I think I have a lot of good reasons to be. I was bullied constantly as a kid. My parents didn't understand me. Most of my life, I never figured out people, but I've always embraced technology because it makes sense to me, especially computers and even the internet. Even though there's a lot of shit on the internet these days, a lot of misinformation, and I think it's a big reason Trump won. That's again the fault of people. It's not the fault of the internet itself. So people have to use technology responsibly. I'll just end with that, though. This is a channel that has politics, so here's my political pitch for today. We have to do the right things. Like Gandhi said, we must be the change we wish to see in the world. I think the world is what we make of it, but we better make something good of it. Otherwise, we'll be sorry. Anyway, so that completes my feature today on the World Wide Web. So thank you for watching. Keep thinking, and I'll see you guys next time.